I need that money. I really do. I need that money to pay my bills, the electric bill, the internet bill.
Apparently, our boy Phil does need that money to pay his bills, his internet bill, his cable bill, and all his other 87 bills that he pays on a weekly basis. Anyway, what's up, everybody? It's your boy Duty back again with another video. Today, I am posting a video on DSP. It's in regards to his whole copyright infringement of the original Level 1 podcast naming rights, and his response yesterday on his podcast, where he talked about trademark and how his stream is different than the Level 1 podcast, where his name is the Level 1 he's using the name the Level 1 podcast, so it's different. And he also gets into a whole bunch of other excuses, and basically what our boy DSP does is he throws a lot of information out there, thinking no one's actually going to go in and do a little bit of research, and just to, easily debunk anything he has to say. So we're going to play the video, we're going to watch his response, and then with one simple article, I'm going to debunk his whole argument. So let's get into it, pimps.
All right, so lots of fun stuff coming up. All right, now there's one thing I want to address very quickly, publicly. I feel like I should do this publicly, even though 9 times out of 10, when I hear rumblings from the trolls and assholes, I ignore it. Okay, in this case, because idiots think they know something, which they don't, I will publicly address something because some troll just said it in my chat, and I'm like, well, if the trolls are going to come to my chat and start spamming nonsense, I might as well address it briefly. Okay.
You're addressing it because you got a notification from Level 1 podcast asking you to cease and desist using their name. So it's documented, Phil. This has nothing to do with the trolls. Trolls didn't go out there looking for anyone to make this shit up. The team that has the Level 1 podcast, that's been out for many years before you started using it, actually found out that you started using their information and did not want to be affiliated with you in any way. They didn't want your name attached to their content. So this has nothing to do with the trolls. It's already documented. It's out there. It's on Twitter. It's on Reddit. It's on tons of Discords. So the only reason why you're addressing this is because you got a letter and you got an email essentially telling you to stop using it politely. And from what I gather, they're probably going to be seeking some legal action against you. Now, you're going to go on a whole spiel about it's nonsense, they have no case, but I have one article that's just going to blow your whole argument out of water.
A couple weeks ago, I rebranded my pre-stream podcast as the Level 1 Podcast. This is a show where every day I talk about gaming topics, I talk about myself and my streams, gaming news, and the like. Okay, that is the show. You guys know that. I've been doing this for a couple of weeks. Okay, well, the trolls decided to reach out to try to find if anyone else on the internet ever did anything called the Level 1 Show or Level 1 Podcast or just Level 1 Podcast. And apparently they reached out and found someone who at one point had a podcast called Level 1 Podcast.
That's a lie. No troll did that. The Level 1 podcast is out there, has been doing a podcast for years. So he's lying about that. So let's keep going.
Okay. This show has been defunct since 2020. So it's been over 2 years. There hasn't been a new episode of the show.
That's not accurate. They actually publish shows all the time.
The show dealt with tabletop gaming and RPG style gaming. It has nothing to do with video games whatsoever. It has nothing to do with online content creation. Nothing like that.
That's not true. They do discuss video games. They do tabletop gaming and so on, but they do talk about video games as well.
Whatsoever. And it's called Level 1 Podcast, not the Level 1 Podcast. It's a different name. Okay?
Just because you add the in front of it doesn't make it different. Doesn't make a difference, pimp. And I'm going to blow your argument out of the water in a few minutes.
Somehow, from what they're basically saying, okay, is they have tried to convince this person that I am infringing on something. Now, it doesn't make sense because what...
These guys aren't morons, they're not idiots. They found out that you were using their name and they do not want to be associated with you, Phil. They don't want to be associated with your toxic streaming, with your toxic self, with your toxic history. That's what it is. People don't want to say it when they hear the Level 1 podcast. They don't want to think of Phil. That's the reason why they're upset, and they have every right to be upset.
What would I exactly be infringing on? Let's think about this, how the law works, okay? Copyright. Has anything in the Level 1 podcast, since I started doing it 2-3 weeks ago, infringed on anyone's copyright? No.
Okay, I don't know what he's talking about. Copyright, no one is talking about copyright. No one is saying that he's taking their content and reposting it. That's copyright. That has nothing to do with that. So he goes on a 2-minute spiel about copyright. No one is arguing copyright with you, Phil. So I'm going to forward this a little bit.
I don't use any copywritten content in my show. It's 100% original content. Trademark. What if someone at one point had trademarked the phrase Level 1 podcast? Okay. All right. Fair enough. Well, let's look into that. How does trademark work in the United States? Are you aware? I'll tell you. I know exactly how it works because I've been involved in this legally before. When you go to trademark something, okay, you have to file for it with the Trademark Office of the United States. It's very expensive and it's an arduous process. It takes months and months and months, sometimes a year, to get anything even filed with the Trademark Office, okay? When you do this, the Trademark Office specifically will ask you, what are you trademarking? What is the content that you're putting out, and what are you looking to trademark? So I'll give you an example. Let's say I had something called The Blue Show. The Blue Show, like that's the name of the show. It's a color or whatever, okay? And the name of the show is The Blue Show, okay? The first thing the Trademark Office asks is, what is The Blue Show? All right, well, it's an online podcast. Okay, what is the subject matter of your podcast? They want to know that. It's not just you make the show, it's what is the show about? You have to tell them that. Okay, now what are you trademarking? Are you trademarking the show with that name? Or are you trademarking something further? Because the way the Trademark Office works, it's so complicated. You have to trademark every single version of what you're trying to trademark for every medium. So,
okay, let me stop you there, pimp. You're both podcasts, so that's number one. You're a podcast called the Level 1 Podcast, and the other people are a podcast called the Level 1 Podcast. So there's similarities as well. Most people that trademark stuff are typical companies, business that actually create a physical property. Most artists do not trademark anything. They usually pick a name and then it becomes their brand. For example, I'm pretty sure when Lady Gaga first started off, she didn't trademark the name Lady Gaga. That became her brand. Now, if someone else comes out and calls himself Lady Gaga, right? The original Lady Gaga can say, hey, wait a minute, you're infringing on my use of that name. I'm known as Lady Gaga. That's my brand. You are infringing on it. Now, they could be, say, a country music singer, which Lady Gaga is more of a pop singer, right? That will stand up in court. If Lady Gaga, the original, decides to take it to court, she can take it to court and she will win. She will win flat out. And I have a story here that's it's very similar to what I'm arguing right now. And it's just going to completely blow Phil's argument completely out of the water. But let's keep listening to this moron.
So let's say you have a show you call The Blue Show and you put it out every day and it's a podcast. Well, you have to categorize the show. If it's about politics and it's a news talk show about politics, you have to call it that. That's what you're trademarking. If someone else makes a show called The Blue Show and it has absolutely nothing to do with politics, or it's not a news talk show, that's considered different via the Trademark Office.
I'm going to stop him here. He's talking trademark. We're not talking trademark. We're talking brand. We're talking brand. The only thing these people are saying that you took is their name of their podcast, which is their brand. So you're taking their brand. Nothing about trademarking or copyright. So you're just going in this circular argument try to distract from the original point. So we know where you're going with this, Phil. It's total nonsense. So at this point, I'm going to stop listening to you because you're talking copyright, trademark. We're not talking either of those things. We're talking about brand. Okay. So now that I showed that video and that response and you know where you're going with DSP, where DSP is going, let me forward a little bit here, and then
I already looked into it. By copyright means there's not even a close resemblance of anything. I'm not using anyone else's content. This is my own original content. Trademark? No. I'm not doing a show called Level 1 Podcast. I'm doing a show called The Level 1 Podcast, which is a different name. It has nothing to do with the other show. Even in subject matter, it's not the other show. The distribution means is different. Everything is different. It's completely different. It doesn't work. Okay?
Okay, I just wanted to play that little point, because then he starts going on about, oh, you're going to be wasting your money, blah, 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 blah. Of course, you know, they're trying to distract from the actual argument. So as you notice, what he talked about is copyright and trademark. Okay, I'm willing to give you that argument. First of all, neither of you trademarked the name, so that's the first thing. Secondly, copyright. This has nothing to do with copyright. I'm not saying it's copyright. Let's look at the third point, branding. Now there is where you're stuck at, pimp. You're stuck with branding. Now, I have an article for you guys that I want to share that completely blows out DSP's argument. So, you guys, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but essentially a few months back, there was a lawsuit that was settled. Now, this lawsuit had to deal with the country group called Lady Antebellum, which was a group. They were, like, their country, it's a woman, two guys, and they do some pop and so on, right? So they've been singing and, you know, recording under the title Lady Antebellum, and they've been using the name Lady A to promote their venues, their record labels, and so on. The funny thing was that there is a singer called Lady A who goes by the name. She's a smaller singer. Lady Antebellum is worldwide. They've sold millions of records. Everyone knows who they are. They have a lot of money. They're rich. They have tons of money and so on. Now, this Lady A singer is basically like a club singer. She's been around, she has a couple records, but she's not big. So she found out that Lady Antebellum was using the name Lady A to do promotions. So she reached out to the group and basically said, hey, you know, if you're going to be using my stuff, I think you should compensate me, or we should come to some type of arrangement or agreement or whatever the case is. Apparently, Lady Antebellum decided to use her social media platform to try to scare or make this Lady A kind of go away and give them the legal rights with no compensation to the name Lady A. And that lady, Lady A, decided, no, I'm not going to let you bully me. And of course, social media, this was all on social media. It was on Twitter, Instagram, everything. And then there was so much backlash to the Lady Antebellum group because they were like, hey, wait a minute, why are you trying to bully this small time singer? Why don't you just compensate her? Or why don't you stop using Lady A, because that is not your name? Now, mind you, Lady A and Lady Antebellum, those aren't trademark, Phil. Just like you were using your whole argument about trademark. This had nothing to do with trademark. It had to do with branding. Had nothing to do with copyright like you were arguing, because it was different music. The lady was a club, I think she was a jazz singer. Lady Antebellum is more of a country group. Different, like you were stating, different mediums, different genres, or whatever the case is. So again, we're not arguing copyright, and we're not arguing trademark. What we're arguing is brand. And the Level 1 podcast is a brand which you stole. Just like Lady Antebellum was trying to steal the Lady A moniker and use it for herself, right? So that's the story. You guys can Google it. It's out there. It's been out there for a few years. Lady Antebellum got a lot of backlash to the point where she actually had to apologize on social media because there was so much backlash and negative feedback where they felt like she was using her privilege or position of power, whatever, to force this smaller content, creator, the singer, and force her to basically give up her name and give up her brand so that Lady Antebellum can use it, right? So lo and behold, a few years have passed. What happens? They take it to court. Lady A sued Lady Antebellum and her record label. They took it to court, And sure enough, what happened? They settled. They settled. So as you can see here from the header, Lady A Country Group and blues singer agree to drop lawsuit over shared name. Lady A, formerly known as Lady Antebellum, and Lady A, also known as Anita White, have settled their trademark dispute. Essentially, the record label came and said, okay, we know if this goes to court, we're going to lose. So what they did was they settled with Lady A. They gave her a cash settlement. And they basically said, okay, here's this, we're going to drop the suits. You drop your suit and we drop our counter and you get, this large amount of money. And I think initially she was asking for like $1 million so that they can use it. And she wanted to share the name, which I think was more than equitable, which was fine. But Lady Antebellum Group said no. They wanted to use it. They didn't want her to use it at all. And they weren't paying her. They were not going to pay her. And then that's what kind of led to the lawsuit. So the band Antebellum, from his name Judah, amid protests. This when the whole George Floyd happened. And then the lady that filed suit, the Lady A, she was an African-American blues singer. So of course people threw in the whole, you have this person, this group of privilege that, is infringing on the rights of, this minority woman. And that, of course, probably added to the fuel of this. So again, they settled the lawsuit. She won. They didn't say what the lawsuit was. But yeah, so, I mean, it doesn't matter whether they played music 3 years ago or 4 years ago or hardly playing. If they have that brand, like this lady, Anita White, had the Lady A brand, you can't infringe upon that. You're infringing on her brand. So, So as you can see here, it's settled. The band did not disclose what the settlement was. So we don't know if they're going to just stop using Lady A, or they agreed to give Lady A some money, do a settlement, and allow Lady Antebellum to use the name. So again, this one article completely blows your argument out of the water. Phil. This has nothing to do with copyright, because nobody's copywriting anything. Has nothing to do with trademark, because neither you or the original podcast, Level 1 podcast, has a trademark. This has to do with branding. So you're taking a name that this podcast is using, that's used for years, and taking it as your own. So you're infringing on their branding. So just like Lady Antebellum in the Lady A case, if they want, they can file court proceedings and take you to court and file for damages and basically say you're infringing on their brand and they want you to stop it. And they may want you to pay them. So there you go, Phil. So you might want to read up on this article and come up with a new argument for why you're not stealing someone's brand. So hope you guys enjoy. If you guys agree with me, leave a comment. Let me know. If you don't agree, leave a comment. I look forward to reading it. Peace out, pimps.